Welcome, everybody. My name is Emanuel Pastreich, independent candidate for president, and I'm joined today by Susan B. Lochocki, also independent candidate for president. How are you doing, Susan?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Right. Well, these are discussions, they're not debates, and we want to take on the topics that seems like every other candidate is trying to avoid, and to do so in an objective, scientific, ethical manner from the point of view of the citizen and from the point of view of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, which define what America is, which I guess I thought was what running for president was about.
Yeah, well,
So,
that is the oath we take is to defend, protect, and oh, what's the other? There's another word. The
uh,
Constitution.
right.
So that's the job as president.
You would think, and also our police, our military, civil servants, everybody should. So we're going to take on the issue of abortion, which has become suddenly an enormous uh, headline grabber. There has been the reinstatement of an 1864 law by Arizona, which not only makes abortion illegal, but threatens anybody engaged in any aspect of abortion with jail time, and which was suddenly restored, so basically out of the blue. And then we have other cases, for example, in Alabama, extremely restrictive, almost overnight uh, enactment of these restrictive laws, regulations, and then all sorts of sort of harassment regarding abortion. In the case of Alabama, the state went as far as to say that fertilized eggs were people, and you could be subject to all sorts of felony charges for disposing of fertilized eggs, which, of course, is so off the deep, and that you have to wonder what the actual political motivation is. So I've spoken too much. I really want to hear Susan's position as a woman, someone who has some skin in the game, as we say. Uh, how should we look at this abortion issue in American politics?
Well, I think what I noticed over the last couple of months is really we're using the word wrong. I felt like something was off, and I finally figured it out because it's covering way too many issues, and you have to separate it now because we cannot talk about the word abortion meaning all its different meanings and then be effective. So the 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 new law that is now somehow in effect in where is it, Arizona?
Arizona is
um
the most recent one.
yeah, so I'd like to read that anyways because who knows how they were using the word abortion back then. you know
Right,
this is like what, 160 years ago. So
right,
it has maybe even a whole nother meaning that we don't even know what it is. But
right.
that's for another moment. But anyway, so I like to talk about it separately. So there
Mhm.
is something called termination of pregnancy.
Right,
And so if we're talking about termination of pregnancy, there's many ways to go about that. And you can there's taking a pill, there's getting an operation, or there's doing a what is it, early birth, where you start the process to birth the child out
right.
at
Induced.
an earlier time, pre what's the word, it's not
Well,
coming.
induced labor or induced,
Induced labor.
right,
Induced labor. So these are like the some ways that you can terminate a pregnancy. But are
right,
we just talking about termination of pregnancy? Because my thing is this operation called abortion, which is an actual operation. And actually,
right,
there's like more than one abortion type of operation. So the one that's really risky is not the first one that's available. There's like a second one. It's called I think a D&E or something, and that's the one that's a little tricky, because apparently, it's just has things that the doctor has to do that could cause damage not only to whatever is inside, but also it could harm the woman,
Right.
the girl or the woman.
Right.
But the earlier abortion technique operation is actually used for a multitude of things, and to
Right.
forbid that from being used is not possible. I mean, there were
Right.
2 times in my life where I was about to bleed to death, and they
Right.
had to put me under and perform that operation on me to
Right.
get the baby out and to
Right.
get the placenta out. I had birthed my son, but the
Right.
placenta wasn't coming out.
Right.
So
Right.
those 2 times it saved my life.
Mhm.
And then another time, I mean, technically 3 times. So another time I had these pre-cancerous growths inside my uterus when I was like 25 or so.
Right.
And the doctor discovered them and he said, well, we have to get these out. And so, of course, at that time, that's what they did. They went in and they scraped it
Right.
out and sucked it
Right.
out, and then it was gone. So the operation of abortion must be available throughout a girl's life
Right.
and a woman's life, throughout
Right.
the entire life. We
Right.
cannot not have that operation. But there
Right.
are different versions of the operation that sometimes might be needed and sometimes can be passed over to other things. And
Right.
so, I think the doctors need to know what they really need to do, and they need to work within their capabilities.
Right.
One thing I know that they've done in Switzerland and perhaps all over Europe is, because a lot of people were, a lot of women were, or people with uterus were dying from botched abortion
Right.
techniques or things like that. They decided to have specialists, people who really specialized in just that operation.
Right.
And then they placed them throughout the country so that the specialists were then there, and then women were surviving these things, rather than getting sepsis or if you leave a little bit of the placenta inside, you
Right.
can still bleed to death. And
Right.
so, and you need a professional doing that. And some of these doctors, maybe they don't do it so often, so they're not really professional at it. So we need specialists doing these operations to save women's lives
Right.
and to keep everybody safe, because like I said, it's not just for terminating a pregnancy. That's a whole nother ball of wax. And
Right.
there's a whole many techniques for that. But this operation, the early abortion operation, is absolutely needed, period. And to
Right.
abolish it and to say it's banned, I mean, you it's not possible.
Well, let me ask you some of the difficult questions which come up. And I think this is important for both of us as candidates, since we have certain conservative constituents who are concerned about abortion. It's an important issue comes up. So one question would be, if you go from conception, I certainly it would be ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous that the law in Alabama to say that fertilized eggs are people and they have the same rights. So this is ridiculous. On the other hand, uh, infanticide, which used to be practiced also, right, where you have a baby born and then you just kill the baby because you can't feed it, or that this is seems wrong to me. That this obviously would certainly would be murder. But and then you have a sort of a whole space in between, and it is not simple. I don't think it's simple. What is your feeling about that question? About where do we legally in our society decide this is an individual who has the same rights as you or I?
Well, it states clearly in the Constitution, the 14th Amendment. I
Mm-hmm.
can read it for you. And it
Please.
states that life begins at birth. So let me get. So all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States.
Right.
So you have to be out of the woman, and
Well,
so therefore you have to be born.
you have to be
If you're
born,
not born,
right?
You're not a citizen.
right,
You don't have rights. And if you're not born, you're still attached to the woman, so you're part of her body.
right, right,
So you don't have rights. She has the rights. And
right,
as a parent, don't we have jurisdiction over our children?
right.
We're the guardians, right, of our children. We make decisions, life and death decisions
We
sometimes
do.
about our.
Although I guess I would hesitate to say that parents have a right to make, to choose to do something harmful to their children. I mean, this is also a difficult question, right? I mean, I have,
Well,
there are cases in which I know, I mean, just in my own experience, people who think parents are abusive of their children, they think they can take the children away from the abusive parents, and they end up doing more damage to the kids than for them to be with their abusive parents. But I think there are cases in which parents lose the right to take care of their children. What are your feelings on this?
well, I was beaten as a child,
Hmm.
so yeah.
How
I
do you
don't
see?
think it's a great thing. I
Mhm.
don't think it's necessary. What
Right,
can a child who is 6 year old possibly do to
right,
deserve a beating? I'm
right,
sorry. I just
right,
can't imagine it. I
right.
don't know what I did to deserve it, but that's
Nothing.
parents have that right still in a
Right,
lot of cases. And is it right? Is it wrong? I'm going to say it's wrong, but
right,
because once we're here, we are citizens and we have rights of our own.
right, right,
And so those getting back to also the embryos
right,
that are available to be put back into the woman or
right,
any woman, right? They're outside of the body.
right,
So
right.
technically they're citizens, you know? I mean, sorry, it's true. So we do have to decide on that one. But
Well, no, I mean,
maybe.
I, it is I mean, it's a humorous thing, but it's not. Of course, it's not humorous in the case of the state of Alabama. If you say that all fertilized eggs have the same rights as citizens, you're creating a. I mean, I think it's intentionally to create a mass, create controversy. But would you say that a rack of 100 fertilized eggs is the same as 100 citizens? I mean,
Well, I think I don't know. One of the Kardashian girls about a year ago was saying that she wanted to get pregnant and the stored eggs had been destroyed.
yes, right.
So
Well,
there's lots of evil going on, and people
right,
do things on purpose,
for sure.
and so how can we I don't know. In my opinion, she has a right to sue, and she can
Right,
sue that these people killed however many eggs she had there, you know?
right, right, right.
So, yeah, I don't know. So it is a slippery slope where we're heading. It's
Well,
true.
I
But
appreciate
that's
the fact
science. Science
that
is messy.
I appreciate your saying that you don't know because I don't know either, and we as citizens have to struggle with these issues. I want to bring up another um, re- aspect of this abortion debate, and that many people say, well, um, well, it's obviously I shouldn't say it's obvious, but I have in my own experience I've met women who've told me that they've had abortions and that it was traumatic for them and that at some level they felt they would have liked to have kept the baby as a single mother, but it was economically and socially impossible that the United States, if you're a working woman, there's no support, and so it seemed rather disingenuous often to say, well, we have to save life and children, and yet we make it absolutely impossible for a woman who wants to keep a baby to survive economically.
That's right. And that's why I'm coming, with this concept of paying women to stay home and raise their kids for 20 years
Uh-huh.
because it is impossible. And we've seen the results of when you force mothers to have to work and raise kids at the same time. I mean,
Right.
There might be one or two women who can really do it successfully. I'm not going to say
Right,
it's not possible, but for
right,
the majority of women, we are just
right,
not super women. We are
right,
just normal women. And to do all of that and deal with life's problems, it's just too
right,
much. The
right,
stress
right,
level is so high in this country with
right,
everybody. And
right,
it's not, we're at a boiling point and it's emergency. We need to bring mothers home. We
right,
need to give them the resources and the tools that they need. And that includes money, a roof over their head, health care, all the
right,
things that they need to raise happy and healthy children. Because we're
right,
not seeing a lot of happy and healthy children. We're
right,
seeing sick kids mentally and physically. And
right.
this is, you know,
Speaking
attitude
of,
wise too, it's just terrible. So my platform is really about addressing exactly that issue, because I think that if women saw being a mother as a actual career choice,
right,
and or a career inside of a bigger career, your
right,
later career or whatever, and you get paid for it and there's
right,
respect involved,
right,
then more women will choose to not only be a mother, but actively pick out a good father to have a baby with,
right, right,
and they'll go on vitamins before they even think about getting pregnant so that they have the best quality child too. So there's no
right,
more oop babies. Everything's planned.
right,
And this, I think it's a great, it's what's needed. And it's
right,
not only needed in the USA, this is needed all over the world. But
right,
the USA leads often in these sort of things, and it's time to lead again. It's
right.
really time to take this step. And then, as you know, you've heard me talk about my apprenticeship for all program too, which then will help kids once they're about 14, 15 years old, get them working, get them earning and being part of a society.
Mhm.
Because again, they're lost. They're just hanging out at home and they're playing video games and they're
Right,
listening and watching all sorts of things that are not healthy for their mental health.
for sure.
And that's why we have all these shootings and drugs and all these issues going on. So again, for me, my platform is really a 1-2 punch, where we're bringing moms home and we're changing the education system and giving youth a direction, because going into debt to get an education that you'll never use is absolutely insane. We are the
Right,
only country in the world that does that, that sends kids to college and makes them go into debt to do it. I mean, that's just
right,
ridiculous.
right,
So we couldn't hurt our country more than what we're already doing. We don't need Iran and North Korea to do anything. We're doing it enough to ourselves,
well,
you know?
sadly, that is often the what happens to nations when they move from being republics to being empires, that they end up destroying themselves from within. I want to say a little bit about the question of sexuality, and which is related, I think, to the issue of abortion. There are some people who take this conservative position that really we should just have we should have chastity. That the real problem is sex in itself. Although I think this is simplistic, and it actually impinges on the basic rights of citizens. That there is some truth to the way in which our society has sort of, in order to sell products, in order to induce this sort of mindless consumption culture in our citizens, that sexuality, sort of a bland, meaningless consumption sexuality as a way of stimulating people and selling things, has really had a negative impact on relationships, and that this is related to the issue of promiscuity and sexuality. What are your thoughts on this question?
Well, I think religion plays a huge role in
Mhm.
how people think about sexuality in our country.
Right,
And we have so many mixed uh, issues in it. So I was raised Christian, I was raised Catholic. And there, you're supposed to be a virgin, right?
Right.
Until you get married. Well, I was raped at 9 years old. So,
Mhm.
what happens then? So
Right.
I've already, I didn't know what was happening. I was
Right.
tricked into it. It was not at all pleasant. And in fact,
Right.
it ruined my life for a long time. But I'm now grown up and whatever. But I mean, you know,
Hmm.
so if you teach a 14-year-old boy about reproduction information at school, and then he starts inviting or telling
Right.
his little sister to invite her girlfriends over, I mean, you know,
Right.
the problem is in Christianity, it's taboo to talk about.
Right.
So
Right.
you can't talk about it. Moms don't talk to their kids about it. And this is the
Right.
problem. You have to talk to your children. Dads and moms need to talk to their kids and say, this is how babies are made, yes, but
Right.
you shouldn't do this so at your age or whatever. And if somebody tries to touch you in a bad way, you come and tell me, you know.
Right. Right.
But nobody ever had that conversation with me, so I
Right.
didn't know what was going on.
Right.
And this is where the problem begins. So we got to break the taboos because they're still there. So
Right.
in
Right.
Christianity, for women, sex is supposed to be a dirty thing, and
Right.
you're not supposed to do it. And but yet, then you're married and your husband wonders why you don't want to have sex,
Right.
so because it's dirty
Right.
supposedly.
Right.
So it's so many mixed signals just in Christianity alone.
Right.
I don't
Right.
know about the other religions, but let's just let's just really talk about sex, and let's treat it like an adult topic, and just
Right.
you have to talk to your children, parents. That's the
Right.
most important thing that I
Right.
can say.
Right.
And they're just afraid. And when I was raising my daughter at various times because of my rape, I wanted to prepare her. So we
Right.
had to have that talk too about good and bad touch. And, if somebody does something, please come and tell me. And it
Right.
was difficult. And, when is the right time to bring it up? There's never a right time. So you're just going to have to stumble into it. Once the conversation starts happening, then it happens nice and easy. But getting into these difficult conversations they are difficult sometimes, I have to admit. But you stumble into them and then they start happening, and then it's good. And then your child is prepared for life. That's our job as parents, is to prepare our children.
Well, I
So
want to
go ahead.
say something. I really appreciate what you said, and the fact that you're willing to speak honestly about that experience. I think qualifies you to be president more than anybody. I have someone I know he's in his 80s, and I think, just very recently, for the first time ever, spoke about how he had been sexually abused when he was a small child, and he couldn't speak about it. It became just this unspeakable taboo, but it haunted him for his whole life, how he'd been sexually abused. So I really do appreciate you're willing to speak about that honestly and to talk about the issue of abortion and women's uh, needs so honestly.
Yeah, well, these are, I am a woman, so I've been, and I'm 58
Yeah.
years old. So I've lived through a lot of things, and I have a
Right.
daughter and a mother, and then I have
Right.
friends too. And
Right.
so
Right.
that's why I've crafted my platform the way I have,
Right.
because we really miss this bit of society,
Right.
and we need to catch up. We need to fix this problem, and the sooner we do, the happier we don't have to have a stressful country. We could actually be humming along, having a good time, but for some reason there's all these people putting up roadblocks, and I don't know why. But I think um you know part of it is people don't read the Constitution. They don't know their rights, and
Right.
they don't know how to go about getting their rights either. But then there's just a lot of lying and cheating going on too. So it's just crazy.
Right.
But all I can say is I'm doing my best to work on these issues. And I really want to read some of these crazy laws about banning abortion that are out there, because I have to start suing those states too. I mean, I've got my lawsuit pending again with the Supreme Court, so hopefully we'll have some changes soon. But this has just been a crazy ride, but I hope to get some results once, and not just keep writing stories and trying to convince the Supreme Court that this is important.
When you say this, you're referring to what you're talking about
Well,
abortion specific about your other
well,
suit,
my other lawsuit is the one about registering to vote and how it's
right?
unconstitutional.
Right.
But I can't move on to the next issue of abortion and how banning abortions is
It's
unconstitutional.
also unconstitutional.
Uh, but I because I got to at least get one lawsuit done. I have to find out how to
I
do it
understand.
properly.
Right.
So,
Well, I want to just say, I mean, to address our conservative constituents, that uh, there are two issues which I think are legitimate or that we should consider. And the first is, which I just mentioned a moment ago, that there is an effort to use sexuality and a commercialized sexuality to manipulate our population, and that we have pornography, which young boys and men are exposed to, which distorts the way they look at women, the way they look at sex and sexuality, and there are very destructive ways which lead to things like promiscuity and rape and other things, and they are in part because of a sickness within our culture, and I think we should at least recognize that this is part of the issue.
oh, absolutely. Yeah. I want to make one more point kind of clear.
Please.
Um, so a woman's fertility starts actually around the age of 13 and it
Mm-hmm.
goes to about 40. But we tell women, or I mean, we call them girls, but technically, once their
Right.
period starts, they're
Right.
technically women, right? They have a
Right.
potential to be a mother.
Correct.
So we tell them for the first 10 years of their biological clock, they shouldn't get pregnant.
Right.
But why would nature make them ovulate if they weren't ready?
Right. Right.
So I think we also need to think a little bit differently about that period of time, because what I've seen is there are a lot of women who believe that, and they waited until they had the right job and until they had the right house and then until they had the right man, and
Right.
then they were 40, and then
Right.
they don't have any eggs left.
Right.
So
Right.
this is a huge problem. We need to really, I mean, I think by making motherhood a career and a career choice, that then we'll get 20-year-olds going in and being a mother.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
when you're, as you know, when you're a parent too, you learn so much leadership skills, right? And so much about life, and then add some
Sure.
education onto that too, about the human body and nursing and doctoring and all that. I mean, just think of, then it's a real career, right? But
Right.
right
Right.
now it
Right.
teaches you management, crisis management, negotiation. I mean, how much did you learn being a dad? You probably learned a lot too.
Well, two kids. I mean, it's. I mean, what you say there. I think about if you're applying for a job. I mean, how many children you have or how you raise them is never. It's not even. No one wants to know. In fact, it's a mark against you applying for jobs. So, for example, women who have no children and have their Harvard MBA are considered somehow to be superior to women who have raised three kids, even though the mom knows a lot more about human nature and interacting with people and handling crises.
Exactly. So it's time to rethink this
Yes.
whole parent and the education that one gets on the job training from
Right.
being a parent. And I don't think so. I know that when I was growing up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, if
Mm-hmm.
you put down on your resume that you were a mother, the chance of getting any job was like
Right.
zero. you
Right.
know so I mean, not only did we take men out of the home, but we tortured women by doing that, by taking, and then we
Right.
then we gave
Right.
them like a little, oh, we'll give you a little bit of money, but that's. So anyway, we led women into poverty to be
Right.
mothers back in
Right.
the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Right.
It's only now in the 2000s that suddenly we're realizing, no, it's actually okay to be a mom, and we'll find solutions and whatever. But now we're going to go this next step and really realize what we actually learn as being parents.
Right?
And it's just as good as that Harvard degree that you've got. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't
I
matter.
know men. I My daughter had leukemia twice. Do you
Right.
know how much negotiation and stress and
Right.
emergency I had to deal with? I mean, it was
Right.
just crazy. So
Right.
I am very well trained at
Right. No, I agree. I
at
certainly understand.
dealing
Uh,
with problems, and spur of the moment problems. So, um, yeah, it's whatever. I think
I
you
mean,
know.
I sympathize with that. I think, I mean, I had a wife who was ill with cancer for 14 years, who I lost, and I took care of my kids with no mother, and so that was obviously very formative for me. I think leadership, that really is very helpful for leadership. I don't recommend that people go through that experience per se,
No,
but
no,
it does teach you a lot. We need the
exactly.
value. I mean, what you were saying about that, I think that if a woman wants to have a child and be a good mother at the age of 20, they should have a decent. That should be a decent income. You should be treated in the same way. I mean, now we have these uh, people trading derivatives and making up money from multinational and private equity firms. We're making tens of millions a year, hundreds of millions a year, engaging in basically rapacious, destructive behavior, destroying local economies. So uh, I certainly. I certainly think if they can get paid that in our society, and they shouldn't be paid that, uh, then certainly a woman who's being a good mother and a good member of society should be entitled to uh, a decent salary, right? An equivalent to what any educated professional should get for that contribution to society.
Exactly, exactly. So and dads too, because
Mhm.
it's a huge job being a dad. Men have an important role as well.
Right,
And although I do think it's important for men to have a career, to
right,
have, although some men are better actually in the home too. So
right,
I could also see a switch where some men will want to stay home and collect that salary and be the home dad,
right, right,
and
right,
that's fine. That's fine. And some women are really more career oriented who
right,
really are terrible with children, or not terrible, but it just doesn't come naturally.
right, right,
And so I think each couple or each situation, everybody has to know themselves and figure out where they fit into the scheme of things. But um but I think I the other part that I'd like to do is give dads one day off, pay them for a day off where
right,
they can spend that day being a dad. They can go
right,
fishing, they can go, bike riding, and
right,
take their kids and have a real, family day. And because I think on the weekends, dads are so busy trying to pay bills and take care of the yard, and they don't
right,
have time and take a little time for themselves too. So I'm all about reducing stress. We need to
right,
reduce. We're so stressed out as a country. The
for
poor
sure.
people here, just I you can feel it everywhere. And we need to. I would also recommend everybody just turn off their TV, stop listening to all the crap.
All the garbage
You
out
know,
there. Yes.
Oh, it's just building hate. As you emailed me too about this new movie coming out, the Civil War one.
Right, right. It's
That's
today.
just
It comes
building
out
more
today.
hate.
It
Oh,
comes out
does it?
today.
Okay.
Yeah. So just so for audiences, and I think that it really is a political effort to try and stir up conflicts between people. This is really it's a different topic for another day. But
Mm-hmm.
I think we really need to be aware first and foremost that so much of the issue about abortion can be solved and it can be done in a rational way. There will be certain points on which citizens will differ, and that's true on many issues. And we need a deliberative democracy to address those issues. but the fundamentals are not so difficult.
No. Well, I think, I how can I say this? A few things. So, and I don't know if this is true. So I heard recently that with the uh, Supreme Court decision to get rid of Roe v. Wade,
Right,
by doing that, they took money away from the healthcare for women, I guess, and some other maybe WIC or something like that. And
Rick.
I only heard that a few days ago, so I've been trying to find out. Nobody is getting back to me from the Health and Human Services, and so I don't know if something has changed there. And so
Right,
I mean, I find that surprising that Roe v. Wade, that something was attached to that as far as um, helping mothers. I don't know how that
so,
could be, but maybe somehow it was attached. I don't know. But uh, I think um, one thing might have been happening at the time of that overturning was at the clinics, they might not have had a place for if a if a if you like induce labor or if a baby comes out alive, they
right,
didn't have a place to put it. And
right,
so I think by moving everybody to hospitals, all the women going in, whether they're going in for a birth or whether they're going in to terminate a pregnancy,
right,
it's better to do it at the hospital because all the emergency things are there. Plus, there's usually a neonatal care unit so
right,
that in case the baby it comes out early or whatever, it can be tried to, they can try to keep it alive.
right,
And
right.
then also the protesters and stuff about these abortion clinics, whatever you want to call it, they don't know why you're going to the hospital, so
Mhm.
they can't protest anymore. So it's safer for women and girls to just go and get health care, in
Right,
peace
right,
and quiet.
right.
So that's also a good thing, that just do it there. But I think I'm leaning towards more induced um labors.
Hmm.
And if you end up somehow being pregnant at a later stage,
Hmm.
and therefore then you can decide if you want to be anonymous to that
Right,
baby or if you want to be um, known to it but give it up for adoption, or of course if you want to keep it yourself.
right,
So
right,
and that's where I am on like pro-choice. There's giving up your baby anonymously, giving it up with a known mother,
right,
or keeping it yourself. So
right,
that's where for me pro-choice is. And I think going to the hospital and terminating your pregnancy at whatever age is definitely possible. It's just the hospital has to know what to do at the stage you're at, you know,
right.
because
Understood.
and until it comes out, it's not a citizen. It's your body. It's attached to you
Right.
and you're attached to it. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate your taking the time today, Susan, and I hope we can meet again very soon and continue to discuss real issues. And I specifically am thankful that you, as a citizen and with your own experience as a mother, your own personal experience, that you are willing to speak honestly. It really makes a difference.